Welcome to Blue Tinted Glasses and... Go on, mate, you say yours.
For Fox's Sake TV, hello.
There we go. So, me and Anil thought that we would get together on this crazy deadline day. Deadline day is always crazy. Sometimes not so for Leicester. But we have some movement. So we're going to talk about incomings or incoming maybe. And then also some outgoings. But I know a lot of people will want to be here for the main news, which is Odsonne Édouard to Leicester City. So talk to me, Anil. I mean, as I'm sure everyone knows, it's going to be a loan move. What are your thoughts initially? Before we get into the breakdown and stuff, what are your thoughts initially?
I think it's quite decent, to be honest. Look, everyone wanted Fotisionadius. That's the fact. Everyone wanted like a saucy, exciting, exotic signing, someone that we hadn't seen before, who we thought could be good. And I think we got a player like that, but we got that player as the attacking midfielder, which was Bilal El Khannouss. So strikers, I use this analogy a few times. I think the last time that we spoke, it's like if you're out on the pool and the pub's closing at 11 p.m. and it's 10:58 and you're feeling really lonely, you got to start, maybe getting a little bit less, expecting on what you can get. So of the options that are available to us, we were linked with Édouard before, if you remember, when Brendan was in charge. In fact, were going to buy him for quite big money, I believe, if we'd have qualified for the Champions League. So in an alternate timeline, he would already have been here. I know that he maybe is not the most spectacular for Palace, but you've got someone who's Premier League proven, I think can do a job. And I think, put it this way, Lux, you didn't ask me this question, but I think this is quite a big difference. If we'd have bought him outright versus we loaned him, I might have a different opinion. But I think to loan a player like this, I think is a good signing. It's better to make it than not make it. If it doesn't work out, no risk. And he could actually be quite good. So I like it. How about you?
For me, mate, the other names we were linked with. So I was convinced up until probably a couple of days ago that it was going to be Datro Fofana. I was convinced because we've been linked with him since the start of the window. And similarly, it was the same with Skip. We were linked with him early on, and then we went in for him. Ayew linked with him early on, went in for him. And I thought that it was going to be Fofana. And then, obviously, over the last couple of days, there was talk of Armando Broja. And again, I knew that the whole Ipswich and Chelsea deal there was a £30 million obligation to buy. And I knew straight away, and even when John Percy tweeted about it this morning, I was like, Leicester City are not going to get involved with that whatsoever, especially with the knee injury that he had a couple of years ago, the ACL. I think he's injured now for 12 weeks. Right now, I don't actually know what's going on with the Broja deal. So hopefully, if Anil doesn't know, someone in the chat can let me know. But loan obligation free, even option free, I just think it's a good move. Obviously, we'll pay his wages for the year, of course, but I just don't really see it as much of a risk. I think it's fine. I think he's probably better than Tom Cannon, and he may be better than Patson Daka. We'll have to see on that. So I think it's a good move overall. And I think, mate, if I'm honest with you, I think he starts. Not tomorrow, obviously, but I think he starts over Vardy when he's fit. So when Edouard's ready. So I think that's it, mate. In the back of my mind, the main thing shouting out to me is risk free, and I think that's all that matters. So, do you want to? Should we get into what you've prepared for us all?
Bring it up, but I will quickly add to that we could say it's a risk free, but I think to be fair, if you look at a lot of the comments from your channel right now, and certainly what I'm hearing on the streets, so to speak, is it not the bigger risk that we didn't go all out to sign a better striker? That's the argument. But maybe we can come to that a little bit later. So let's just concentrate on who we've got first, and then we'll get to it. So, Odsonne Édouard. So he looks like if you didn't know who he was, you must have been living under a rock because he's been playing for Palace for the last 3 seasons. He was at Celtic before that and very good for Celtic when he was there under Brendan. Do you know what, Locks? I think this is your favourite term in the world. If I had to describe this forward, you tell me, how would you as Locks, blue tinted glasses on, how would you describe this type of forward?
Oh, let's go for defensive forward.
Oh, it's the new catchphrase. I always think you should make merch of a T-shirt saying defensive forward on it.
Yeah, man.
In speech mark. So the reason why Locks is saying that is if we look at this, so this both shows you the information on the right-hand side, but on the left-hand side, it's like a chart that compares it to all other Premier League players in his positions, which is forwards in the Premier League, and what percentile we call it. So all of the players, you can see that in terms of tackles, interceptions, and blocks, Édouard is really, really high up there. So this is someone who's going to be well suited to high pressing football, for getting in the opponent's face and making things happen. Hey, Diego, by the way. But what I'd say, I think, which goes a bit underrated, is that if you look at like his passing, his carries, his take-ons, those are pretty high. And what that indicates is that someone who isn't just defensive forward, although I agree with your statement, but someone who is quite good at actually facilitating and linking up the play with other players, which is important. So, of course, whilst you might want your striker to score goals, last season when we were playing with Enzo, actually what the number 9 did quite often is they dropped deep, and actually it was the 2 wide forwards in Steffi Mavadidi, Abdul Fattah, and then Kin and Dewsbury Hall, certainly, maybe not Wilfred and Ndidi so much, that actually carried as much of a goal threat, if not more, than the main striker, because the striker would drop back, bring the defenders with them, and create that space for other people to run into. So I would say if you're looking for a striker who's to play that profile, I would say we haven't necessarily seen it so much under Cooper yet, but if we are going to play that way, this would be a good signing. But look, let's also look at the realistic thing, which is let's look at the assists and the goals, and those are unfortunately his 2 lowest metrics on this chart. Shot creating actions, not bad. Shots total, not bad. Non-penalty goals, actually, I suppose, isn't terrible, but it's okay. But I mean, it's a decent profile. But you know what? Whilst we can go to that, I think this is a better comparison. You might have to squint a little bit. I apologize. But what I tried to do, and I tried to be fair here, is that like a lot of people have said here, which is fair enough, that like, oh, people must be laughing. This is bargain basement. This is terrible. And you have a point. I'm not going to deny that. But who could we have signed realistically in the window, right? That's the big question that you have to ask yourself, because a lot of us were trying to rack our heads. And if you look at Nottingham Forest, I give them a certain amount of respect, even though they're our rivals. And they were trying it on with everyone. They were that guy in the pub, also a bit like me, to be honest with you, that doesn't know their own sort of standing. They haven't looked in the mirror and they think that the 9 out of 10 is going to be interested in them. So they were trying to get like Santiago Jimenez. They were trying to get Eddie Nketiah. They were trying to get more players than that. They were really going for like a big established striker. And the bids were even accepted, but the players said no. So as you can see here, the 5 forwards I've got here, I've gone for Édouard, I've gone for Broja. You mentioned him. I've got Datro Fofana there at the end. I've also gone for Liam Delap because he went to Ipswich, and I also went for Cameron Archer. The player that I didn't put on here was Sammy Schmodix, but is he a striker or is he more of a kind of late arriving attacking number 8? We could have that conversation, because I would personally say that maybe the one that was realistic that could have been looked at probably would have been Sammy Schmodix, who had an amazing goal record last season and has already scored in both the Championship and the Premier League this season. I mean, fair play to the guy, right? But yeah, if you look at these, Christian's just put this here, and I think it's fair that these stats say to me that he probably is overall the best of this bunch. Does that mean he's a great player? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying of realistic options that were sold in the Premier League. It all depends, right? If, for example, Ipswich signed Ivan Toney or something like that, of course, I'd be like, hang on a minute, why couldn't we have got him? If Victor Osimhen would have rolled up at Southampton, I think Southampton would have exploded. But that didn't happen either, right? So of realistic options, this is who we're going for. So I'll pass it back over to you. But just looking at this, what I just want to bring out with these stats is there are other players who are quite similar, I think, in terms of pressing. But if you actually look at it, who's got both pressing stats and the ability to score, actually, the person who is highest overall in those stats, it would come down to either Édouard or Fofana. Take your pick. And I would say that given that Édouard, this is done on a per 90 basis, by the way, so that judges at your consistency. I would probably say Édouard is the better player here, but over to you.
If I'm honest, mate, I'm actually quite surprised by some of the comments in the chat, because I actually am feeling quite positive, right? And trust me, I have not been positive out of the last probably 60 days. I don't know how many days the transfer window has been open for, but let's just say 60 days. I've probably been positive for about 3 of them, right? And that was when Zaha was rumored, right? So I'm actually quite positive with it because I think if we signed any of them strikers on your screen now, you'd still get a large proportion of the fan base saying Jamie Vardy's better than them all. Jamie Vardy needs to start every game, blah, 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 right? Which I understand. We all love Vards, right? But I would agree with you, bar maybe Cameron Archer. When I say Cameron Archer, the stats there say otherwise. But
he's the weakest.
He is the weakest. But I just feel like he's got the most team. I want to say he's got the most talent. But again, if we're on about a loan, it doesn't really matter if he's going to grow into something. For the now, which is the important thing, right? What we need right now, what we need this season to keep us up. I would agree. I think Édouard is probably then the best option. Liam Delap, I don't rate that signing, if I'm honest with you, at all.
Me neither.
Fofana, I had just accepted was going to happen. I'm glad it hasn't. I'm glad we've got Édouard over him. And I think that one was going to require an obligation to buy as well, probably, knowing Chelsea. And same with Broja. So honestly, mate, I hadn't seen these stats. I'd seen Édouard's, but I hadn't compared them to the others. And now that I have, it makes me even more happy, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
I put a tweet out yesterday saying, when Bilal was confirmed, saying, bring me a 15-goal striker and we'll stay up. And Édouard probably isn't a 15-goal striker. He could be. He could well be. You never know.
Let me ask you a question, though, Loxo, because these are some fair things that are a bit elephant in the room. So let me throw 2 words at you. Those words are Kelechi Iheanacho.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. He looked like he couldn't score 5 in a season. And then that year that Vardy got injured and Iheanacho came in, I think he outscored Ronaldo, Messi, whoever else that in those 6 months. I think he was like the highest goal scorer in Europe or something silly like that.
So I hear what you're saying. Édouard or Iheanacho?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. Who do I think's a better player? I think Iheanacho might be a better player, but Iheanacho showed regularly he couldn't do it consistently. He couldn't do it consistently, and it was mostly bad with Iheanacho. I liked his link-up play. I liked it. I did. But I don't know. It's hard to say, man. I can't pick between the two. But in my opinion, like, I would have rather have just kept Iheanacho, just kept him. But because he left, we had to kind of bring someone in and all. Just before you carry on, I want to get some comments up on screen as well. People in the chat, we are listening to you. We aren't ignoring you. We are seeing you. So, Krishna said, I would have liked an option to buy. Yeah, an option to buy again. Risk-free, right? Absolutely. But there might have been more complications in the deal, having to sort that all out. And this was the quickest way to probably get it over to get it sorted. Again, another negative comment from Gray, but I understand where he's coming from. I'll stock his loan now, though. Bad running of our club. Would you sign for Leicester? I mean, this is why we're never going to get the likes of Santiago Jimenez, isn't it? Because, and even like Eddie Nketiah, not like I'd want him, but you know what I mean? Eddie Nketiah, these players wouldn't come to us at the minute. I want to get your thoughts on this one, Anil. Beyond the 90, Crystal Palace fans are happy, which is not a good sign. Very different energy to Ayew leaving. What are your thoughts on that?
That is interesting. He hasn't been successful for Palace. I thought at the time when they signed him that was quite the coup. I do remember there was a game though that I think we were 2-0 up and ended up losing 3-2, and Édouard did score in those games. So classic, he would score against us. But what I would say is that how have Palace set up until very recently? They played pretty dour football. When he was playing for Celtic under Rodgers, they were much more of a front-footed team. But to be fair, are we going to be a front-footed team this season? That's something to think about. With the players we've signed, maybe there's more possibility that it will go there. I do sort of tend to agree there with Neil that I've found actually in terms of consistency, the best way to tell if a player is good or not is to just genuinely ask the fans. It doesn't always come off like that, but it is remarkable how often fans will say something and it really comes back to you. Like I can even think back, Monaco fans of Yuri Tillemans are saying too often he just loses the ball constantly. And I think we got a lot better than what they got from him, but there were definitely games where that was true. For Tawu, the Sporting fans are actually like, I can't believe we let him go. It's Amorim. He was forcing him into wing back. He's got talent. We shouldn't let him go. They were actually quite happy to see him do good for us. That was interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting that Ayew, they've also said good, and Ayew's have made quite a strong start to his Leicester City career. So that is concerning. But as you said, it's risk-free. We can try it, and who knows? Obviously, you have to question the motivation of the player as well. Is it like something that they really want? Have they got the bit between their teeth and they want to prove something? Or is it just like, oh, whatever, is better to... I mean, look, he's coming. I'm guessing he wants to play. He's going to be able to play. What I think might help us with this deal is that, as we mentioned before, he's been scouted before, which means that most likely people in the club have spoken to him, probably Rudkin. They probably tried to convince him of the project. So to be fair, if they come back from now, you are going to remember that as a person. They're like, okay, I didn't sign for them, but these guys did their research. I know that they like me. It's not just like the spur of the moment deal. And that might make you feel happier. But I think that's a very good comment for Neil to bring up. I'm trying to think, but I will say maybe ones that other people like. I do remember some people, I mean, obviously it's non-league, but people saying, oh, Vardy's not good enough to make it in the Championship, yet alone the Premier League. That's a bit of a classic whoops. I think Kante, fans of them said similar things. Why is this guy going to the Premier League? He's got no chance. Age like milk did that comment. So sometimes they get it wrong.
Yeah, and obviously, again, just talking about what Neil said, I think, you know, we would always get excited when fans from the club that players come from speak highly of them. So I think it would be ignorant to just ignore the bad ones as well. I mean, again, with the whole Ayew thing, we're like, you know, although, you know, not many people were inspired by it, but all the chat from Palace fans was that they'll miss him and that he was a big player for them. So that's positive. So we've got to listen to the bad as well from Palace fans. From the, you know, if we trust them on Ayew, we've got to trust them on Edouard.
Can't be selective.
100%. Just quickly, I mentioned it a few minutes ago, but do you think he starts over Vardy?
Yes, because I don't think Vardy should be starting. I think the way you get the best out of Jamie Vardy in the Premier League is to bring him on with 30 minutes to go when defences are tired. We just mentioned this in our match preview for the Villa game, because Villa play an insanely high line, which means that like players who are good at getting in behind, who are composed and can finish, can cause havoc. And prime Jamie Vardy would be absolutely insane in a game like that. But we haven't got a prime Jamie Vardy. But do you remember this game during COVID where we played Arsenal? And it's the one and only time we've beaten Arsenal at the Emirates Stadium. And what happened? Because Jamie Vardy was carrying an injury, is he only played for half an hour and he came on in the last 30. First 60 minutes, we basically did nothing. I'm not sure if we even had a shot on goal. We were just playing a containing game. Last 30, we put him on and it was amazing how the game just changed instantaneously. All of a sudden, the whole team pushed up. Arsenal sat back. Under then found him on the break and Vardy slid away.
I was going to say, was it that goal? I remember that goal.
Yeah, Cengiz Under, if you remember him, another blast from the past. So, there you go. And that showed it. So, look, I think Vardy can definitely start games. I mean, he's still already got off the mark. He's been quite impressive when he's played. But, yeah, he shouldn't. We want to get the best out of him. So, I think we can rotate. I mean, look, I would ask you this question. If Patson Daka wasn't injured, do you think we'd have signed a striker?
I think if Cannon was going, for me that would have been the disaster if Cannon went and we didn't bring another one in. If Cannon stayed, I wouldn't have been I wouldn't have had that much of an issue. But if Cannon was going regardless, yes, I think we should have signed a striker. I suppose your question is, would we have? Yeah, maybe not. We should have, but maybe not.
Let's come back to Cannon, because that was going to be my next topic, which I think is very interesting. So we're both kind of saying, oh, yeah, Cannon, he can go. But, you know, it's one of those things where when someone's not playing, they're the second coming of Jesus Christ. Like, I can remember for a long time that Harry Souttar was the best defender we've ever seen in a Leicester shirt when he wasn't playing. Look, sometimes people are right. Brendan Rodgers kept Charlie Arsonju out of the team for a long time, and that was a mistake, in my opinion. But Tom Cannon, I didn't know too much about him. He was injured for a long time, but when he played last season, he was quite good.
Yes, he was.
Am I unfair in saying that? He was quite good. So we're not. Look, I can understand why we wouldn't, but let me ask you. So why haven't we tried Tom Cannon? Why won't we use him?
You know what, mate? If I knew that question, You know what I mean? That's the answer to life itself, mate. Honestly, I've got no idea. Enzo Maresca, mate, when he played, I remember. Was it the Millwall game? Do you remember the Millwall game? Was that the FA Cup game? He scored 2.
Yeah, I don't know if that was. Yeah, I think it was. I remember him scoring against Birmingham and Huddersfield for sure. He probably did score against. I mean, he was quite good. He scored when he played.
I think he scored 2. I think he scored
Yeah.
two goals against Millwall in the cup, and I think that might have been his first game or maybe the second game that he scored in. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's great. You know what I mean? What have we found a gem here? And then as soon as Daka's back, as soon as Iheanacho's back around the club, you know, that's it. They're in ahead of him. And I didn't really understand it. And I thought, oh, well, maybe it's one of the, you know, maybe it's Enzo. You know, maybe just Enzo doesn't like him as a player or doesn't suit his system or whatever. But, you know, since Cooper's been here, it's been exactly the same. He barely got any minutes in pre-season, if any. I think he got a few. Mavididi was being played as a striker over him, you know, and I'm just thinking, what's he done wrong, you know? And it does make me wonder: is he just really bad in training? Like, is he stinking, or does Cooper just not think he's ready at this level? Is that it? You know, I think it's hard to tell. I can't imagine it being the latter. Like, I don't know, mate. What do you think? Because it really has me stumped. It really does. I know there's a big gap. Andrew says it here. There was a big gap.
Bring that up. That's a great comment.
Yeah, there's a big gap between a championship player and Premier League player. Lots of 20-goal championship strikers can't do it in the Prem. I think Cooper likes a more physical forward. I understand that, but surely he's good enough to be third choice in the Premier League. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I find it interesting. Look, first and foremost, and this worries me a bit more, is that everyone's very concerned with John Rodkin, but it's like I thought Leicester, we don't really have a director of football role, even though that's technically what John Rodkin is. I think he's more of a general manager. Like, a good director of football is supposed to be the guy that has like a multi-year plan. So, for example, if you're signing Tom Cannon, there's nothing wrong with that. And the point is, they said when we signed him, we're signing one for the future. But if it's one for the future, and now we're just going to farm him out after 1 year and he's hardly had any games, that just indicates someone's bad at their job. But I think worse, it kind of indicates bad joined up thinking. Like, the best teams, I think Brighton are really good at this, is they sign players. And Buonanotte is a great example, who's been loaned to us. They'll be like, okay, we don't expect this guy to be ready till he's 22. So he's 19 now. But this is what we're going to do. And we're going to make sure that each loan he has is a little bit higher up, a little bit better, so that he's either in the conversation for the team or at worst, we're going to sell them for a profit. And it's like, if there's rumors that Tom Cannon's going to be sold for 5 million. We paid 7.5 million for him. Does anyone understand maths at Leicester City Football Club? Probably not. That's why we're going to be on -8 points pretty soon.
Well, yeah.
So that's really, annoying. But yeah, what can we say? That's kind of a thing. I mean, I think though that your comment there, Andrew, there, nail on the head, to be honest with you, which is that, do you remember Dwight Gale? He was the best example for me. He had a few seasons where he scored 24 goals in the Championship, but in the Premier League, he'd barely get past 5. And it's because he was fast. So the pace killed it in that division.
And another name there, Adam Armstrong as well. I mean, you saw what he did in the Championship last season. He's played in the Premier League before and didn't really do anything. And it might be the same this year, you know?
Neil Maupay, who we didn't get, but he could have ended up at Leicester. Very similar.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Christian, that's very kind, but you should stick to your guns. Come on, stick to the Neil's channel. But no, anyone who is watching, anyone who's watching on my channel, subscribe, and also subscribe to for Fox's sake, and then also vice versa as well, if you can. That'd be really good. We're going to come back to Edouard in a sec, but just whilst it's coming out on the Twitter sphere, on X, I wanted to just bring this up. So confirmed, Ben Nelson has joined Oxford United on loan until the end of the season. I think we've known about that for a few hours, but it's confirmed now. And also, as we were just speaking about him, Tom Cannon and Stoke have both confirmed that he is the number 9. So I know he was linked with Sheffield United as well, but it looks like maybe he preferred Stoke. Maybe he's going to get more minutes. You know, you'd imagine he'd start a lot of games at Stoke, whereas at the Blades, you don't know. Maybe not so much. we've just been speaking about Cannon, but what do you think to Ben Nelson? I'm a bit disappointed in this one, if I'm honest. I thought,
How
I don't
come?
know, maybe I'm overhyping him, but I thought he could do better than Oxford. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but my counterpoint is he'll probably start every single game.
True. Yeah. What I just said
And
about Cannon. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's what you want if you're a young player. You just need to get games. If he comes back with 40 games on his CV, it'll be in a good state. But I know what you mean. That sort of hints to me that he still won't be ready for the Premier League next year. And instead, next season, he'll need to loaned again, but he'll need to be loaned to a team that's going for promotion or playoffs at least, like a West Brom or a Norwich, or are Norwich even going for it this season? Don't know. But let's pretend that they are. One of those sort of teams.
It's interesting though, isn't it? Because Enzo preferred Nelson to Connor Cody, and you know, maybe I'm surprised Enzo ain't coming for him actually. But no,
I mean, they've got the infinity gauntlet of centre backs at Chelsea, do they not? So
they have. I mean, it sounds like a Chelsea thing. They'd get rid of Trevor Chalobah and bring in Ben Nelson. It just seems like something they would do.
To be fair to Nelson, though, I don't think that's Cooper saying he's not good, but it's like what is better for him to play 3 games a season or for him to play 30 games a season, especially at centre back. You got to rough it with those physical forwards, learn your spaces. Somewhere like that as well, he'll be the Rolls Royce, right? He'll be spraying the passes out, could really help his confidence. I think an interesting one, you know, Kasey McAteer has not gone out on loan, and he's obviously not going to probably start that many games, but I can understand, for example, why he has been kept, because I think that even though you could argue it'd be better for him to start games, he can still make an impact at this level just from the sort of pressing and knows how to hit the back of the net.
Yeah, 100%. Just so I check, is that the end of the Édouard presentation then?
Of Édouard, I've got more on the other players, but let's pull that out. We don't need to go through that. You might want to talk about...
Well, go on. What were you going to say? Sorry. Talk about...
No, I was going to say, because you might still want to talk about Bilal or Skip, but we don't need to go through that. I think people know who they are right now.
Well, let's have a little touch on Bilal, because last time I was on with you, it was actually really useful, some of the stuff that you brought up. And if anyone's watching who wasn't watching then, it'll be useful. But just before you do it again, I'll just go through a few comments. So hello to Slayer. Thanks for watching. Will Alves also not gone on loan? I'm going to touch on that as well, actually, Krishna. So
that's interesting.
I'll star that comment. I'll come back to
that. Did Michael Golding go out on loan? No.
Nope. No. And I think he scored for the development squad today or yesterday, one of the two. Cooper said in the past, the developing him wanted to loan a bunch of young players out in the past, so he's done the same here. Medgo, Barcelona Leicester fan, said the squad is slim. Great. That's another one I want to talk about. So let me remind myself for that one. McAteer can come on and impact the game. And finally, Tyler said, backup centre-backs don't play, backup wingers do. Nelson's loan was much more vital than Kasey's. I'm going to come back to the comments about Will Alves and McAteer, but Anil, take over on Bilal in case anyone's missed it. Of course, he signed. It's an exciting one in my opinion, but tell us about him.
Look how happy he looks. He stayed up all night to take this picture. So he's delighted he's played in the Premier League. Right. I mean, I'll actually skip straight to it, right? We had this gentleman playing for us last season, and I think overall he was probably our best player, mainly because of his goal contribution. But if you look at his charts, this is like 2 radar charts plotted against one another. Dewsbury Hall is in red. That is absolutely insane. That is like elite level. Of course, this is at championship level, but it's like if you saw a graph like this, you'd be expecting them to be like in almost the world-class category if you could do that in the Premier League. I don't think he will, but you know, in the championship, it was in the top 1, 2, or 3 players, which is why he ended up finished second in Player of the Year. And you also got underneath there Bilal, but we'll come to that in a moment. So the point is that like we just got promoted, our manager had left, but perhaps more importantly, our best player from last season had left, and there was a huge hole that we needed to replace. So I think it's right that people are saying, but did we need a striker? And maybe we did. But on paper, we still had Patson Daka, Jamie Vardy, and Tom Cannon at the start of pre-season. In terms of central midfield, we were looking very weak, right? Dennis Pratt had left. Okay, Wilfred Ndidi did sign on. Yunus Akgun had returned back to Galatasaray. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall had left. So we needed to fill that in. We did start bringing in some players, like we brought in Buonanotte. Skip came in, but Skip is, to be honest with you, more the Winks rotation option, right? So we had a massive hole there in attacking midfield. Someone who can create, essentially, right? Huge thing. So we've spent the money. And again, if I look at those comparisons that I made earlier, who could we have realistically have signed in that position? And I would actually argue that I think we got the best possible player we could have got for that position. I'm being genuine. There is that unproven aspect to him. I think the most obvious one was Gabriel Sara, who was at Norwich. He was left-footed, and in terms of chances created, progressive passes, that sort of stuff, he was the second-ranked player after Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. But we'd even made a bid for Sara. But Sara was actually cheaper than what we paid for this player. So I think we knew the value of him, and we knew that he was good, but maybe not. The fact he went to Galatasaray as well, I think it speaks volumes, right? I know a lot of people, for example, said, why didn't Leicester sign Gustavo Harmer? But he stayed in the Championship for Sheffield United. It's like there must be something that the stats are saying why these teams are not picking them up, whereas other people, they'll jump on like hawks. So Bilal, if you look at him here, his stats are so good, right? Firstly, in terms of the creativity, look at his assists, top percentile. Look at shot creating actions, right at the very top. Passes, progressive passes. This guy is going to be the guy to deliver the ball to the strikers and wide forwards to create chances for us. And against Fulham, we weren't doing enough of that. Simples, just weren't creating enough chances. So this is a big hole that we had in the team. So just from the creative outlet side, brilliant. But the other thing that goes underrated in this game is take a look at his tackles, 90th percentile. So this guy can also get stuck in. That means he can win the ball back high up the field. And if you're playing pressing football, also implies that in terms of physicality, he can probably handle himself, which is important. Because who remembers Adrian Silva, who played for Leicester, and that one shocked me that he was so poor. To be honest, I was expecting him to be a good player. Also, if you can see here on the left-hand side at the bottom, you've got Aerials 1, and he also ranks quite highly there. So he's probably quite tall, but again, in the Premier League, being able to bully the opposition or at least be able to handle yourself is extremely important. So on all those stats, he's good. What we could say is maybe blocks and interceptions don't look so good here, but I think that's because of the role that he played. Like, he's playing higher up the pitch. He can win the ball back, but, if the goalkeeper takes a goal kick and it's already gone past you, you're not going to be able to block or intercept it, right? I mean, that's how life works, right? So there's that aspect to him. And yeah, just coming back, this was the main thing I wanted to say. So if you look at his graph, it is a bit hard to see, but he's generally strong in most of the areas that KDH was. Interestingly, if you see, in terms of tackles, he's considerably better than Dewsbury Hall. I would say, though, that playing for a Leicester team in the Championship, when you get 70% of the ball, how many tackles can you even make, right? But you can see he ranks better, actually, in both shot-creating actions and passes attempted. Otherwise, though, if you look at the chart, you're basically seeing a player who is quite similar in profile to the one that left, but is younger, has upward potential, and maybe even could be better. He's a full international, already playing for the Morocco national team. Morocco got to the fourth in the last World Cup, you may remember. Not too shabby. And I mentioned this before, but he is currently the Belgian Young Player of the Year. And whilst they haven't all been hit, previous winners of that award include Axel Witsel, who had a very good career, went to Dortmund and Atletico Madrid. There was a guy called Yuri Tillemans. He won it twice. Yep. Can't think if he ever did anything good. I reckon he might be quite good if he went to a couple of Midlands teams. Never know. And Leon Bailey was another one who's also playing for Villa at the moment. And he also comes from the same club, Genk. Genk have provided players in the past. They provided a guy called Wilfred Ndidi. Heard he was all right in the Premier League and even the Championship if it goes that way. They had a player called Thibaut Courtois. They had a player called Kiernan Dewsbury Hall. They didn't have Kiernan Dewsbury Hall, but they had Kevin De Bruyne, who's also a pretty good player. Leon Bailey also came from Genk as well. And Yannick Carrasco also came from Genk. So they've got good quality. I mean, again, they didn't all work out, just to make sure that people get both sides of the argument. There was also a guy called Wesley. He ended up as a striker for Villa. He came from Genk and he didn't do too good. But he also got injured, to be fair to him. So yeah, I just think overall, I would ask everyone actually in the chat as well, what was the highest priority position that we needed to address? In my opinion, it was this position. And I was concerned, if I'm being honest, I think this signing should have been made as the first signing we made at the start of the transfer window. But maybe the counterpoint to that is that if we'd have signed someone like that, it would have been Gabriel Sara, but we've ended up with a better player, even though we had to wait longer. So is that worth it or not? Don't know. Anyway, I've thrown a lot of words at you. What do you think?
Well, I was saying last night on a different show with somebody that I feel like you know when you were younger and you got a toy for your birthday, and then Christmas comes. And when I say about the toy for my birthday, I mean Facundo Buonanotte, and then obviously Christmas comes around and you get the new shiny toy, and that is and that is Bilal El Khannouss. What do you think this means for Facundo? Is he now? Will he be on the bench, do you think, or will it be minutes shared between the two? Will it just be competition, whoever's doing better starts, or I mean, it also frees up Buonanotte if there are injuries or anything like that to play out wide, because he's done it before from both sides, actually, left and right. So you think Bilal, as the permanent transfer, will be the one to take priority, or what do you think?
No, I think it'll be rotation. I think obviously the long-term plan will be for him to be in there. But I actually think fair play to the club and to the manager, because during pre-season, I was so depressed. I was like, what are this lot doing? This just feels like a repeat of the season that we went down if they learned absolutely nothing. And to be fair, they said, judge us when the window closes, not right now. My fear for that was, though, is that by the time the window closes, I mean, we play Villa tomorrow, and the problem is that because some of these signings may not be able to play, look, the likelihood is after 3 games we'll have 1 point, right? And if we end up going down by 2 points, and we could have got those extra 2 points because we made the signings faster, I will be extremely annoyed, because I felt the season that we got relegated, Dean Smith may not be everyone's favourite cup of tea, but he was actually averaging over a point a game. So if Dean Smith had been in charge for the entire season, that would mean 38 points, which would mean we'd have stayed up, right? So point is they acted too slow and we went down. And that's my fear, that, again, we acted too slow. But if we look at the squad, I actually think it actually exceeds my expectations. Obviously, this is what I had hoped for versus what I thought would happen. And if I look at the team, generally speaking, there are 2 solid options for every position in the team, maybe apart from one, which one of your people in the comments mentioned, which is that there's no backup for Christensen. I don't really rate Luke Thomas there, but maybe you could put Justin on that side. That could be a bit of a weak area. But other than that, right back, you've got Ricardo and JJ. Centre backs, you've got Fass, Vestergaard, Okoli's coming, Cody. 4 centre backs. Cody's got Premier League experience. CDM, you've got Winks, Skip, Chowdhury, indeed he could play back there. Ricardo could play there in the squeeze. You've got options. Number 10, Bilal, Buonanotte, they can play there. The 10 that drifts in, Mavididi, Bobby Reed, Jordan Ayew, Kasey McAteer, wingers. But I mean, there's a lot of options there, right? Striker now, you've got an option. So I'm really bad at answering your question. Yes, I think they'll rotate, but he's just going to see whoever the best players are should play. And I actually think, even last season when we started flagging, I genuinely believe one reason for that is where was the competition? You knew who was going to start. Akgun's not getting into the team by that point. Vardy had dislodged it, and people got complacent and they thought, we've pissed this league, we've won it now. And then it started falling apart a little bit. So I think that's important. And look, the bigger thing is that we've gone more for experience, whereas Ipswich, say, have gone for potential. So which of the 2 approaches is better? If we go down, we might look a bit stupid. If we stay up, we'll look good. So anyway, I said so much. I guess apologise. What do you think, Lux?
Well, I've got a question that I've just thought of. I thought about this yesterday, and I thought, no. But maybe, is there a possibility in which, even if it's 1, 2, 3, 10, 20 games this season, where Bilal could play as an 8 behind Facundo, with either a Ndidi, Winks, or Skip?
That's what personally I would love to see. If this was Enzo, he would play both those guys, right? And he'd probably have. Look, by the way, I think Skip is low-key a good signing. He was expensive, but last season, when Winks started getting a bit tired and his performances started dropping, the team played so much worse. So having someone who can literally play either alongside him or like for like, I think is huge. So yes, actually, I think, well, look, it depends, because in our system, are they even number 10s or are they number 8s? It's interesting that Cooper thinks of them more as 10s, whereas Enzo had them more as 8s. So it's like tomato, whatever. It's
box crashers, box crashinates.
Yeah,
Wilfred
yes,
Ndidi.
that's what I think they are. So yes, I think you could play both of them. And look, to be fair to you, Locks, that's a big thing though, right? Because I still think that in all of the games so far, a big issue is that we've shown too much respect and we're not trying to impose our style on the game and get control of it. Like even against Fulham, after 5 minutes, they were having all the possession. You say, are we going to be brave enough to just keep passing like we did to teams last season, so they start retreating rather than we start retreating? If you, in order to do that, you're going to need to have your technical players who are good on the ball and want it and keeping it. And you have to put as many of them in the team as possible. The downside, though, is that if you then don't have in your team an Ndidi, maybe even, I'm trying to think who else would come out. Maybe Christensen will come out. I don't know. Then are you just going to get bullied off the ball, which can happen? Premier League's all about transitions as well. They can have the ball for 90% of the game and still lose 3-0. It's very easy.
Yeah, I agree. This comment as well. This is where it came from because I was looking at Bilal's. I call him Bilal because I saw somebody earlier call him Beck, which is interesting.
Sorry, that was me. I apologise for the shame that I've caused on the Leicester fan base.
Yeah, that's quite an all right name. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'll take that. So yeah, I saw that he had played some games as a winger, some as a number 8. I even saw a couple of games he played as a 6, which blew my mind.
Nice. Locks. This is a very good player.
Yeah.
Whether or not he can hit the ground running, I don't know. But as I said, genuinely, who else in that position could we have got? A few of us were talking about it on socials. There's maybe 1 or 2 other people. There's another guy who plays in the Belgian league called Cameron Puertas, who's ended up going, I think, to Saudi or Qatar or something like that. Because he's a bit older, maybe he could fit in straight away. He plays for, the Union Saint-Gilles, which is the Brighton sister club, who've developed a lot of good players over the year. He was maybe another realistic option. But other than that, and Albert Grunbach, if you heard of him, he was a Norwegian guy that was linked to us last season. He's gone to France, and I believe he's already been quite impressive in France. So he could have been a good one. But yeah, the fact that this guy, if you just look at how comfortable he is on the ball, the thing that I love as well is watch how he turns out of trouble. That's a hard skill to pick up, and this guy's got it.
Well, he's got a hard task kind of trumping Facundo Buonanotte's debut, because that was sensational, in my opinion. Buonanotte's debut, I thought it was really impressive. This comment here from Sportster, so he mentioned about Facundo coming inside from the right. Now, I feel like we've got a bit of a dilemma on the right side because of Abdul, if I'm honest. We saw in the first preseason game, or the first televised preseason game, Shrewsbury, that Cooper played Fatawu on the left. And he had McAteer on the right cutting inside, which allowed Ricardo to get forward, like what Josh has said here. Yeah. What do you think of that? Because I wasn't happy when I saw it, because I thought, no. You need Abdul on the right. You have to. You can't lose out on that kind of cutting in on his left foot. You know what I mean? Which we saw so much, and beating men kind of out wide and all of that. So I feel like it's a bit of a dilemma, because it's a bit like Ricardo. We need Ricardo, don't we? He's one of our best players. And I think the only way to get around it is if you either have Fatawu in that type of role who comes inside, where we've seen Bobby Decordova-Reid on the opposite side, or the other option is you have Fatawu on the left and JJ as maybe the left back who comes inside. So what do you think to it? Do you think is Ricardo that important? Yeah, it's basically choosing between Ricardo and Fatawu, isn't it?
That's essentially it. Well, firstly, that's such a great comment. So it's a really good discussion to have. Actually, through preseason, not only did we try what you pointed out, but we also tried it where, so Christensen is the fullback that gets forward to support the attack. So in another game, we tried the same thing where Ricardo was the fullback that went forward and joined the attack. And that meant that Fatawu, instead of playing as a wide man, he played as the drifting 10. So the person coming inside. And he was very poor in that game. The Ricardo was quite good. So as you say, it's like, it's a bit square pegs, round holes. And unfortunately, someone's got to make the sacrifice. Although we don't, by the way, we could play a system that would favor both of them as we did last year. But now we've obviously brought Ollie Skip into the team. So that's not an option either. So the option is either, Ricardo's good and he's contributing to the attack, but then Fatawu's weak. And then we know how good Fatawu is. And are we letting someone waste? And you got to think of the resale value that Fatau is going to go for more than Ricardo is these days. Or do you do what we're doing now, where you incorporate Fatau, who, by the way, in terms of statistics, is the highest ranked player for Leicester this season, right? And you drop Ricardo, which is what he's chosen. But you know what I would say is, why does it have to only be one solution? We should be looking at training, playing games, and if, for example, you've just got one of those weeks where Facundo is banging everything in, like sometimes you just do that in training, we'll change the team to do that, or go for a tactical side. Like, for example, we're playing Villa this weekend. Villa, the way they play is very interesting because they only have one wide man. And what they tend to do is John McGinn, who starts on the left-hand side, actually basically moves straight into the midfield and plays as a 10. So in my opinion, I actually think Ricardo would be good in that role, because Ricardo last season was basically playing in central midfield as well. So if he's going to be going one-on-one against that player, it might make more sense for him to do that. We'll see if that does or doesn't happen. But to be fair, when we're playing Spurs were going to play Heung-min Son on that side. And JJ's got a great record against defending him. So in that case, you play that one. So again, coming back to the squad, and again, I think we have to give some respect to the manager and the club. We've got a squad. So it's not just forced one way. We can do a bit horses for courses. We've got some different options. And also there's injuries, there's form, tactical setups. So we can handle a little bit of everything. Yeah, I still think the overall quality of it is still a bit low. That's fair to say. But we have that option. And I think that is good. And it's all experienced. So we could see exactly what's been proposed there, that actually we put Facundo onto the wing. And look, Fatau, for how good he is, he still had some games where he had stinkers. Everyone did. Mavididi had some stinkers last season, if you may remember. Even Vardy had some stinkers. Even Keenan Dewsbury Hall, I said he was our best player. He had some absolute stinkers at some point in time, right? So good. If someone's having a bad day, it's fine. Off you come. You can make 5 subs, put someone on who can play, and let's try and win it that way. And yeah, what I'd expect is, even by Christmas time, the team that's emerging as the first 11 should be quite different to what it is now. And that's good. It should just be the best team that's going to hopefully get us points. The worst thing is if all the players are crap, it doesn't matter what we try. That would be obviously a bigger problem.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, just again going back to Josh's comment, so I think what he's thinking of is there maybe Facundo being that where McAteer is number 35, which then allows Ricardo to kind of get up the pitch a bit more. This is the average position against Tranmere, which of course slightly skewed because in the Premier League we're never going to dominate a game like we did against Tranmere, of course.
Actually, Locks, because if you look at it, Luke Thomas is number 33. So what that indicates is that when we played in that game, even though Luke Thomas did also get forward, essentially we were doing the same system, but rather than the attacking threat coming from the left-hand side, it was coming from the right-hand side. So that is kind of the point. And you can also see by Kasey McAteer's position, you can see that he is narrower than the number 10, which is Mavididi. So in this game, Mavididi's been told to be more of the touchline hugger, whereas Kasey McAteer's been told you drift inside from outfield, and Ricardo pushes up to make the auxiliary winger. So I think that is the perfect example. We could do that, and we could do that against any team. And maybe, again, from a tactical point of view, it's more like you look at their team. So if their team has a weak left back or a weak right back, well, if you think they've got a really, I hate to say this because they're not going to do this, but if Chelsea lined up with Ben Chilwell, then maybe I would try and attack down the right-hand side because, he's not that great. And I'd put Ricardo into the team to try and get the double overload on him, right? But, if you were up against a peak Paolo Maldini, I wouldn't do that because he's going to have you for breakfast. So lots of options. It's a great comment by Josh, by the way.
Yeah, 100%. I just had a little look online for this. But as far as I can see, it looks like he's actually traveling down to Ipswich as we speak to sign for them on loan. I don't know if there's any obligation or anything like that, but that's being allowed because of Raheem Sterling.
I know, Arsenal. That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah,
it's nuts, mate. It's nuts. Quickly, there's 54 people watching on the stream. If you can hit us a like, if you're watching on my channel, go over to Anil's and hit subscribe and then vice versa as well. Let's get some comments up. Sancho to Chelsea. Here we go, apparently. So that's an interesting one.
What a mental team they are. Yeah.
You look at Noni Madueke against Wolves and you think, oh, we're fine over there. We don't need anyone else. And then, no, let's bring Sancho in. You know what I mean? Just because we can.
Do you know they've also signed 2 of the best young right wingers in world football? They've got a guy called Kenry Paez, who's this Ecuadorian winger who's a full international at 16 years old, by the way. And they've signed a player called Esteval, who is like the best Brazilian player since Neymar, right? So
I know
they're gonna
Esteban from Football Manager.
yeah, me too. Respect everyone who knows the FM lovers. Yeah, top player. And yet they've signed with someone who's probably going to be on 300 grand a week. Mental.
Yeah, 100%. The final whistle's here. Evening to you, Jack. Thanks for watching. Thanks for leaving a comment. Here's a question, because I've seen this come up a few times and I haven't mentioned it yet. Has Cooper been backed enough? Now, I feel like he has. I feel like he wanted to strengthen maybe the midfield area, and he's done it with 3 players: Skip in the more defensive areas, and then Buonanotte, which is a more than capable Premier League footballer, and now Bilal El Khannouss. He's got Ayew for depth, you'd imagine, and now Édouard, who's, I'm sure Cooper would have wanted Ioannidis or someone else, whoever, but he's got Édouard, which I think, again, for the level we're at the moment, is a deep signing. And we've also Okoli, another player. Who else? You have to keep reminding me, mate, because we've signed quite a Cordova Reed, more depth. I think he's been backed. Now, I still have doubts on whether the squad is good enough to stay up, but I think they've probably given him as much as we could have this summer.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned Michael Golding there as well, although not sure we'll see. In fact, we haven't talked about Alves and Golding, so we'll do that in a moment as well, because that was a good one to do. Yeah, LCFC fan 15 just mentioned the goal that Ioannidis scored in the Champions League. That was ridiculous. But
yes,
to be fair, 2 things of him. One, I'm pretty sure Panathinaikos won like 35 million for him, and that doesn't look unfair based on what he's shown. And 2, I'm not even sure he'd want to come here, because he really wanted to go to Sporting Lisbon because he probably likes the Mediterranean weather. So we might not go. Now, it's interesting Scott's put this. I was going to say, actually, I'm surprised no one's mentioned this, but with our centre-back, we don't actually have a left-footed centre-back at all. So Callum Doyle was signed for that reason. Now, maybe with the new system, it's not as important, but I was convinced that we would try and sign one. And I have to say, I was a bit annoyed that Ipswich got Jacob Greaves for a fairly reasonable 15 million. I actually would have signed him above Caleb Okoli, in my opinion. But the fact that Okoli came in quite early makes me feel that either Martin Glover or probably Steve Cooper really pushed for that one, how aggressively we got him in, because I think he was the first player we signed even. So there we go there. Yeah, maybe we're a bit weak on the left-hand side, but like I say, I'm just thinking about the squad, and I think we've got lots of options everywhere, which I didn't think would be the case at the start of pre-season. But as per your comment, there is a thing of quantity or quality. It's like if you go to Primark locks with £100, you'll probably be able to clothe yourself for, well, I would say a year, but you wouldn't, because of Primark, those clothes will get ruined after 6 months. So, is that as good as if you'd have gone to, like, I don't know, Ted Baker or something like that? Something for someone else to say. But I
buy
think
cheap,
overall,
buy twice.
Yeah. That's the problem. But I'd be interested what he would think. I got a feeling he would overall probably say it's okay. Like, it could be better, but it could definitely be worse. And would you have taken that at the start of the window? I even asked that of you as a fan. So assuming we get Édouard, right? From where we are now to, I'm guessing I can tell by that face, probably not, because I think, to be fair, the one that irks people is it's not either Reed or Ayew. I think it's the fact that we have both of them. I think that's what annoys people. I think if we only had one of those two, people would be a bit like, imagine we had Reece Nelson instead of Bobby de Cordova Reed.
Sula. Matthias Sula.
Maybe, but I think that we've gone for El Khannouss, and I think El Khannouss is the better player. I think Sule's a good player, but I don't think he could, like you mentioned, that El Khannouss could be used as a 6. Sule cannot play that position.
No, true.
But I will say this, if he ends up being an Argentine international for the next 10 years, it wouldn't surprise me. He does look like a very good player.
I think he will be, personally. I think he will, but still, it was always going to be a hard deal to do with Roma knocking around. Of course it was. Yeah. With him currently living in Italy, of course. But no, I would, I mean, the window started quite interestingly, actually, because de Cordova Reed and Okoli were quite under the radar. We didn't hear about them until literally last minute. And then that's when we were just linked with everyone, literally everyone. And then we've done some signings still under the radar. Obviously, this one was definitely under the radar, Édouard. But I've got a feeling it probably wasn't decided until this morning or something like that it was going to happen. They might have had it on the back burner, waiting for if Nketiah came in, of course. That's you need to remember that. So
Zaha, he's the one that got away.
Zaha, yeah, I'm still feeling that a little bit because I think he just brings an X factor, doesn't he? Like he just brings something different, and I don't know. There were a lot of problems with the deal as well. I mean, £9 million for a year is a bit financially irresponsible, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah,
we've been slagging the board off because of breaching.
It might be head versus heart, but I will say this. I was so excited for Zaha because I think he's a player that signing could keep you up. That's how highly I rate him. Yeah. And that's maybe the one downside. I think we've signed lots of players, but unless El Khannouss literally hits the ground running immediately, and he might, by the way.
Yep.
But I don't see one signing there by themselves that I think is so good that just by themselves they keep you up, right? Cast your mind back. But when the last time we got promoted from the Premier League, we only really signed 2 players, Leo Ojoa and Esteban Cambiaso. But I am, well, you can probably see, well, you can't see it at the moment, but that's still the shirt of pride that I have here. And I am convinced that if we hadn't signed Esteban Cambiaso, we would not have stayed up that season. Some people think he's a bit overrated, but as someone who went to a lot of games that season and saw what he was doing, like, it's funny. He was like organizing teams so well. And so what I'm saying is that, like, have we signed anyone of that potential? I mean, look, I think another thing we've got to think of, though, is we're in a mini league, right? And that mini league probably only has 4 or 5 teams, right? What a chart, exactly. So the mini league we're in is Ipswich, Southampton, Leicester, Everton are definitely in it. And who else is in it? It might only be a 4-team league, to be honest with you.
Mate, honestly, don't get me started because I was in a playback stream earlier on with this guy, Leicester fan. He's a good guy, Zach, but he was telling me that we've got better squads than Wolves, than Brentford. And I'm like, what are you smoking? Yeah. Like, we ain't. But what I will say, by the way, mate, is I was speaking to Villa fan last week, a few days ago, Neil, from the For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I said to him, like, when you actually look at our squad, there's players there still that were challenging for Champions League football, you know? And Wilfred Ndidi in 2020 was one of, if not the best DM in the Premier League, or, you know, the best 6, whatever. You know, James Justin was an exciting player. I know he's had his injury since. That was an exciting signing because he came in and like hit the ground running. Ricardo, I'd say before Ricardo's ACL, he was the best right back in the league alongside Kyle Walker and Trent. Exactly. Yeah. So we've got some really good players, but I think it's just maybe we're all wrong, Anil. Maybe we are gonna smash it this season, right? It remains to be seen, but maybe we will smash it. Maybe the relegation season has just clouded our judgment and has got us thinking this team ain't no good. But maybe it is actually quite good.
That would be the dream. It's not impossible, but we got to pick up some momentum. So that's why it's a bit of a shame. Like, you know, you say Vardy sticks that goal away against Spurs for 2-1. You know, bring that up, go on then. That was a funny comment.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Well, look, I think at the same time, the start of the season is when you can feel most optimistic. So why not? I will also say that so far, even in the defeat and even against Spurs, we haven't looked completely out of the game. That's important.
Yeah.
Right. Again, I liken back to that Great Escape season. One interesting thing in that season is we were losing game after game. We were bottom for so long. But even when we were bottom, most games that we played, it wasn't just like a routine walk in the park for the other team. Like, they had to beat us. And sometimes it was frustrating because it's even like, do you know what? At the end of that game, I don't even think we played that badly. But basically, it's like we had David Nugent up front and they had, who were the strikers back then in that era? Can't even remember. It was too long ago. But, you know, they would have the top quality forwards of the day. Edin Dzeko or something like that. Was no Chelsea won the title that season. So, you know, Diego Costa or something up front. So, you know, you can't compete with that quality. So, you know, let's see where it goes. As long as we're competitive and we have a chance, we could do it. I think obviously the big issue is that If this was without the points deduction, you might only need 34 or 35 points to stay up. If we need to get 44 points or something like that, it's not impossible, but that is obviously a bigger challenge. Look, I think it's all about momentum, though. If we can pick up like a little mini run and go and get 3 wins out of 5 or something, unbeaten in 5 games, that could do it and get the King Power rocking. And even when we stayed up in that Great Escape season, it was looking curtains, and then we got that momentum right at the most important part, which was the end. And then in the end, we even stayed up, didn't we? With like a game to go or 2 games to go. So it could happen. Yeah. A lot depends on how those other teams perform as well. I think the biggest problem, as I've mentioned, as a mini league, the best thing that can happen is that it's like a tight relegation battle and you get 5 or 6 teams in it. If there is only 3 or 4 teams, then it's a problem. Like, look at the Championship last season. What was interesting then is that actually by the end of it, there were 4 or 5 teams in contention, right? There was Leeds, Leicester, Ipswich, and Southampton at one point. And so that is what made it really hard for the rest of the division. Whereas, in another season, Leicester could have won it by friggin' February or something like that. And, walk in the park.
This is what I hate about football, by the way. 3 weeks ago, I said pretty much everywhere that Leicester are going to struggle to break Derby's points record, right? Because when you take with the points deduction, and after the Bilal signing and the Skip signing, and now this signing, Edouard, I'm a little bit giddy. I don't know what it is. We're not going to tear up trees, but I just feel a lot more confident all of a sudden. And it might be unjust. I mean, I always take the piss out of Joe Wayman, Mr. Just Joe Football Show, because honestly, with that guy, he's the craziest football fan ever. Because I could click on his stream at 9 a.m. right, if he's doing an early stream, and he'll be miserable. He'll be saying sack the board. We're gonna finish 6th or 7th or 8th. 6 hours later, I click in and he's like, HMS piss the league and all this, right? And that happens to a lot of us. We're a lot of Leicester, a lot of football fans.
He's a lovely fella, that guy. I've got to say, for that reason. I feel like you could just watch him stream cooking or something and he'd still be amazing. He's just got that quality.
Well, let me tell you, I know he's live now, and I guarantee you, if he's got a big smile on his face right now, because they've made a few signings over the last couple days. They've strengthened. It was looking bad for them as well. They lost Somerville and Archie Gray and Rutter, but they've improved the squad a bit now. So, right, we're coming towards the end. I don't think we need to wait until 11 o'clock because we know IU's going to happen. And
Edouard.
Yeah, sorry, Edouard, the other Palace guy. We know Edouard's going to happen, so that announcement will come, I'm sure, in the next hour or so. If it hasn't already, it's 10 o'clock, so maybe it might have. I'll have a little look. Let's have a little look. Leicester. If I haven't been blocked by them. Nothing yet. So that will come soon. But I want to end on this because I've started the comments. I said I'd come back to them. So First of all, McAteer, there were rumours of a loan to Cardiff earlier in the window. Hasn't happened. Now, I suspect that actually Cooper's been quite impressed with him on what he's offered when he's come off the bench. Because I think in the Spurs game especially, he put a real good shift in when he came off. So do you agree with that? Do you think that's what's happened there?
Yeah, so I don't know if you know this about me, Lox. I actually have some coaching badges, right? So I've done a little bit of that in my spare time, right? I actually got quite a high level one. Blatant self plug here, by the way, as well. Mention it in every stream. But
if your kid needs a football coach under 9s or whatever, then hit up a nail. Yeah.
Well, believe it or not, I've actually been to Barnet FC, which is near me, to arrange training sessions and stuff like that. So that's how serious it's gotten. Anyway, where am I going with this? I'm going with this because if I was a coach, Kasey McAteer is like one of the dream players I would like to work with. Why? Hardworking, does what you tell him to do, never complains, always makes an impact, right? But he's also got some quality to him as well. So I could see it as the same with Enzo as well. And I think he was probably taken aback where he's like, if I compare him technically to everyone else I've got in the squad, he's not as good at them. But because he literally will do everything I ask him to without complaining, do you know what? He's like one of those really loyal, lovable dogs. And I mean that in the best possible way, right? He's always there, rain or shine, picks up the paper for you every morning, even if it's pouring down wet. And he just looks happy as Larry just to be your dog kind of thing, right? And so I agree. And I think the Premier League these days, there is definitely the concept of starters and finishers. I've lost track the amount of times that Arsenal put Leandro Trossard on and they just win the game because they put him on. So I think him playing half an hour, I actually think he might do that every single game. I could see it, to be honest, if you're at least coming on for 10. Is that energy and pressing, his off the ball work is amazing. So yeah, he could have gone on loan somewhere, but I think he will get a lot of minutes under his belt. Maybe they'll review it again in January, just because the only thing I think is it's a little bit unfair to him that, like, yeah, maybe if he has like the full season, he'd come back like a level above like what happened with Keane and Dewsbury Hall. But I personally would keep him for that reason. And I would enjoy working with a player like that because all your off the ball instructions, he's going to follow and he won't make mistakes in that sense.
And he just over a year ago, he was at, where was he? Wimbledon.
Yeah.
AFC Wimbledon. Like literally, 4 months ago. Not crazy. And then finally, the other comment to end on was a player that I think every Leicester fan's spoken about him over the last 12 months, 2 years. It's Will Alves, who is kind of considered Leicester's best young academy product at the moment. Obviously, he had his ACL injury 18 months ago, 2 years ago, whenever it was. There was talk that he was going to go on loan because Cooper doesn't seem to fancy him just yet, or doesn't seem to think he's ready because he didn't really play much in pre-season, and he's not. I think did he make the bench against Fulham, or did he not even make the bench in the 2 Premier League games? I don't think he did.
He came on against Tranmere though.
Yeah, and he did all right.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts on this one? Do you just think maybe no one was in for him, or do you think that Cooper just wants to keep him around? Because it looks like he's not going anywhere.
They might want him for the development squad. I don't know. This one, I think, is a bit of a mistake not to send him out on loan because I think he's got the most explosive potential. And I just think that the best way someone like that, unlike McAteer, see, the thing is that I don't think Alves will make that much of an impact in games. Although I admit that he's that sort of person that could dribble past 4 players and win a penalty or smash it top bins. But I think McAteer, because of that off-the-ball pressing, like if you either want to get back into a game or see one out, having someone that just is relentless is honestly a huge asset to have, especially in the last 30 minutes of games. Whereas Will Alves, I think he is extremely promising, but I think it would be good for him to go somewhere and be their hero for a little bit. But actually, Ben Nelson might do it at Oxford. But like, I feel like if he went to a team like that, a Plymouth or something like that, and it's like, oh my God, he's the next coming of Rooney, playing for Rooney or something like that, then he'd come back. And the one that I really think of is Harvey Barnes. Like Harvey Barnes, I remember when he first started playing, no one thought much of him, but the club internally did think a lot of him. He went on loan to West Brom and he just smashed the Championship so hard that we brought him back, and then he came back into the team. And to begin with, people didn't really think he was that good, but that really helped him, and he ended up being a big sale for us at the club. I think he could have an impact. Look, who knows? Maybe like the other one we mentioned is Michael Golding. To be fair, look, maybe you want to teach these players how the system works and get them lined up by spending a lot of time with them. I don't know how Steve Cooper works, but I often think if I was in charge of a club at Leicester, which thank God will never happen because it'd probably be a disaster. But if I was, what I would do is I'd make sure that like the development squad and the first team were playing the exact same tactics. And I'd actually do a little bit of like almost mini, like, although there'd be a manager who's actually in charge of the under 23s, I would be going to them, watching all their games, and I'd pick up on that assistant if he was deviating from the plan. And I'd be like, why are you playing this system? Play that system. I want it so that if it's not now, in 6 months' time, in 1 season's time, that player is ready. And that's what the best teams on the continent do. So do you know Dortmund, best example, when they sell a player, they've already got the replacement internal. And if they don't have it internal, that's when they buy. Otherwise, they've always got the production line going.
Well, what I will say to that is Enzo did it last season, because I was watching an interview, Wanya Marçal, and he was saying that when, obviously, he was in and out of our squad, wasn't he? But I think he went back to the under 21s and whatever. And he said that they were doing Enzo ball basically in their training and in their matches and trying to implement it. So that's actually quite promising, because you think of players again like Wanya and Will Alves and Sammy Braybrook. They were playing that brand of football, which is obviously much better than playing some kind of Brexit ball or something, you know what I mean? Right. Thanks to everyone who's been watching for the last hour and a bit. It's been great. Hopefully you learned a lot from Anil, not much from me, but a lot from Anil in with regards to Edouard and Bilal as well. We touched on. What's coming up on the channel this weekend or anytime soon, Anil, for you, so people know?
For me, we'll be doing the instant match reaction, rain or shine, whatever happens in the match tomorrow. And then what we like to do, I'm not sure if we'll do it on Sunday, but hopefully we will, is we like to do like the super in-depth tactical breakdown. As I said before, what we're trying to do is, what really pisses me off, Locks, is that if you watch terrestrial TV about a team like Leicester, they don't care. Their analysis will just be like, oh, Jamie Vardy scored a goal next, right? Then they'll spend an hour on Man United. They just won't tell you what's working, why it's working, where do we need to improve. So that's the space that they're trying to fill. Really look into what's going on and why. And now we've got this deeper squad as well. I think we're going to get a much bigger indication of how we're playing and why. Much love to all the commenters, by the way. Do you know what? I thought today we would get a lot of people watching because it's, you know what? Even if you had plans on transfer deadline day, I didn't ask you this, Locks, but it's a guilty pleasure of mine to just stay in, pop Sky TV on, and just watch the madness unfold. Because sometimes,
even if your club doesn't do anything, you know what I mean? It's like, yeah. So no, I completely agree, mate. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, agree. All right then. Well, let's end it there. Thanks again for everyone who's watched. Hit the like button as well, please. There's over 50 people, so hit the like and subscribe on both channels. And if you want to enjoy, you're not going live again tonight, are you, Anil?
No way.
No. Right, no, I just wanted to make sure.
Are you? If the deal falls through, are you coming back on to be like thumbnail disaster?
Hey, if the deal falls through, you're coming on with me, mate. No. I was going to say, everyone, if you're not done with Leicester City just yet tonight, then if you head over to Twitter or X and you go to Foss Hub, just at Foss Hub, there'll be a link on his page to a playback stream, just a stream like this, but on a platform called Playback. And a few of us will be talking. I'll be on there. I'll be talking about deadline day, and hopefully we'll react to some. I went to say "Are you again?" Some Edouard stuff. This happened before, mate. By the way, I kept calling Castagna Pratt and Pratt Castagna, just because they were both Belgian. But yeah. Anyway, so that's the end of it. Thanks everyone for watching. Like I said, and make sure to check out both channels over the weekend because there'll be stuff coming out. Cheers, Anil. Thank you very much.